read these varying tea leaves for us, because we're looking at an American Eagle trading lower as it cuts its outlook. We see Gap obviously having a really painful trade after. Is it execution? Is it that Ulta Beauty and the higher ends have the right thing at the right price and a higher end consumer? Or is it that certain businesses just aren't managing to navigate these storms well enough?
Yeah, it's a little of both, but execution is definitely a problem at Gap. They have acknowledged that to some extent, especially in their Old Navy unit, which had been one of their big growth drivers. Now they are struggling with their mix of sizes and styles, and just having trouble appealing to their traditional consumer. So Old Navy not helping Gap at all. The main Gap brand suffering as well. As you mentioned, Banana Republic doing well as that more affluent consumer stays in there.
Well, this is what's so concerning here, because the whole structure of the Gap business was that you had these different brands that all sort of appealed to a certain demographic there, and that if one sort of was doing poorly, then at least you had the other to sort of fall back on. And we know Old Navy was really kind of the driver for this company and for the stock for quite a few years here. I guess, is that model, is it still sufficient, or do they completely need to really rethink that type of diversification?
Well, yeah, I think they may have gotten maybe a tiny bit complacent in sort of letting things run along, depending on Old Navy to shore things up on the somewhat lower end. They've struggled a bit with Gap over the years, as that sort of middle area has been less appealing to people. But they're just hitting an array of both internal and external problems. They mentioned China. They do have a lot of exposure there with the Gap brand in particular, and with the continued COVID zero policy there and the lockdowns, they are struggling there as well. So it's a lot of things hitting them at once. Some out of their control, but some that they just need to take another look at how they're going to turn them around.
John, a major theme of this retail story has been these extremely high inventory levels. What do you actually do now that you have this kind of backlog of material?
Yeah, it's a good question, and different companies are approaching it different ways. Interestingly, Macy's today, noting that their inventory was up quite a bit, actually said that in some ways it's going to be a positive, because they want to make sure they're well positioned for the back to school and even the holiday period, where they are concerned that continued supply chain problems are going to might eat into their inventory more than they wanted. So it's a problem, but it's a problem that companies can approach in sort of different ways.
Do you think overall the headwinds, the inventory, the supply chain, we're just going to get a worse picture going forward, and people are downgrading as much as they can as the baby being thrown out with the bath? What do you make of this guidance right here, right now? Because we're still all reeling from a tech company that, after a month of its own earnings, had to come back and reassess the market outlook and the macroeconomic headwinds. Do we think now that the reality is being shown in these numbers, or is worse to come?
Yeah, that's a good question. I mean, I think there could be worse to come. A lot of companies, the phrase that we've heard a lot this earnings season is the back half of the year. A lot of companies looking with hope toward the back half of the year, feeling like some of the supply chain issues are going to be worked through. Possibly the war in Ukraine comes to some kind of resolution. But all of those things are way up in the air. We can't count on that for sure. We can't count on inflation being meaningfully lower by then. It's not clear that China's COVID policies are going to change dramatically. Yeah. So a lot of questions there, and so there's hope, but I think they have to prepare for the worst as well.